Yeah, we have no idea. So, and then we're gonna invite you guys to jump in as well. And then we're gonna do that twice, and then after that we go into Q&A. So, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Ogechi Harry. Thank you all so much for being here. So by day, I work in architecture and design. I work for one of the largest firms in the world. So all of my clients are the best and brightest architects and designers. We work on all things, all kind of structures all around the world. Before doing that, I started off as an infrastructure finance and strategy lawyer. I started off at KPMG in their infrastructure practice. Very boring. Very boring. But it was good because it taught me analysis. I was a consultant there. And then I worked at Skanska, which is a Swedish developer. So you'll see some of our work, LaGuardia Terminal B, shout out to the big blue S. And then I went in-house at Mayer Brown, where I was an associate for about 4 years, working on infrastructure there in the infrastructure practice. And then I worked at a small finance firm, and I did some economic development work at World Business Chicago as general counsel, and now I'm at Gensler doing what I do. So I've always sort of been in the built environment. My dad is an industrial geologist, and so he had us working in his office. So I was around soil samples. I guess it stuck with me. But I love the work that I do by day because it inspires me to do what I do for Golden Hour. So I'm the founder of Golden Hour. It is an art advisory firm, and our focus is really Black art. We're trying to encourage people to understand how to tell stories intentionally, which is why we are here, right? Especially today. Today, the world, I think the world is upside down. And the effort to try to push out African American, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Latino, and African influences all around the world, especially here in America, is interesting. So I think this is almost like a form of protest, if you will. I think art is a form of prayer. I think that when artists put themselves out there and they fight to tell the stories through their own mediums, I think there's something really sacred and powerful about that, which is why I was inspired by Golden Hour. Golden Hour, there are 2 sacred hours of the day, sunrise and sunset. And so I believe that our art is sacred, and that's Golden Hour without an age. So we're playing on the idea of we own our art. Art is currency, art is life, and I believe that, you know, as an art advisor, I'm trying to encourage people to intentionally collect, to tell stories, to curate stories that mean something to them. Lineage, heritage, pride, power, beauty. And I think that purpose is really important. I think a lot of times people just buy things just to buy things, but as an art advisor, I think purpose and intention speaks to everything you do. So what's your budget? What story are you telling? What is your style? Where are you from? And so that's my approach at Golden Hour. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be talking about intentionality and purpose with Ingrid. And Arthur has been amazing. Thank you for hosting us. And yeah, over to you.
Appreciate it. I love what you said about art is prayer, because that's how I see my work is prayer. I see my creation as like my spirituality. So my name is Ingrid Nelson. I'm from Haiti. I was born and raised there. I moved to the States 15 years ago. And I've been in Chicago for 8 of those 15 years, and Chicago is home in a lot of ways. So my practice is centered around connection. I call my practice Kina. So it's about the soul. So it's a Haitian word that's actually from the space where my grandmother is from. It's in the north of Haiti, Cap-Haïtien. So they add these suffix like to a lot of the words that they have. It means like ours. So it's almost like a prefix, a suffix that means ours. And kinam, kin means like kindred. So this is like, I guess like the pieces of what I want to do. So like connect to the African diaspora, find inspiration, and that type of like connection. So when I started sculpting, it was by accident, because I just had an idea that kind of sparked a journey. I was looking at some African sculptures, and I didn't really know the meaning and the spirituality behind them, but I found the form and the simplicity of the form very rich, and I was drawn to it. And I had this idea of making these sculpted candles inspired by African art, and that got me into a journey of learning how to sculpt. So I didn't know how to sculpt, and I just started taking classes into figurative work, and it's just kind of beautifully, I guess, like spun from there, and that's how I'm here today and having a conversation with you. And I hope that to your call about prayer, I hope to invite you to be inspired to create. I think I was having a conversation with a couple of people, and they were expressing, finding their journey. And I think creativity is so important, especially nowadays, like as a form of protest, like you said. It's like now or never. And I think sometimes, like people get pushed down and not, they focus on like what's going on, and they don't, spur forward, and they forget about like what really is coming from within. So I just hope that this conversation inspires you to create that intentionality, finding purpose within. You don't have to know, it's not about the output, it's not about the financial reward. It's really about like that inner connection with self and that self-discovery. So I just hope that you get inspired. What else? I guess by day I work in advertising.
I was gonna say, you should tell them what you do by day.
So I work in advertising. It's like an interesting, dichotomy, because like in one way you're fitting the capitalistic system, but in another way, sometimes advertising is fun. And so like I'm trying to find like, the silver lining in everything that I do, and learning, and whatever I do there, I can bring into my practice, into marketing. It's so important as artists to learn to market yourself and put yourself out there. So I'm grateful that I get to experience those skills and apply it to my work. Okay.
All right, are you going first or am I going first?
I'm gonna go first.
Okay,
so I guess the first question I had was about how your journey kind of started with Golden Hour, because I think we had a conversation about you being creative. So like, what is that journey when you were a kid, and how did that really set the stage for what Golden Hour has become, and how does that, I guess, transform the vision that you have and where you want to take?
Ooh, I love this question. Okay, so I'm Nigerian. I was born in Nigeria, Kaduna to be exact. And I had to become my own citizen, or I had to file for my own citizenship because my parents became citizens when I was 18. So I had to file for my own citizenship. I grew up in Atlanta. Shout out to Atlanta. And I think what's interesting is I think my dad chose a black city on purpose. So my dad went to Georgia Tech. He got into Imperial College in London, so I would have had a British accent had he chose differently. I just did have a southern twang, I guess. And that taught me a lot about black people, black pride and strength and power and stories and history. And so I think that when I was a kid, I was always very curious because my dad and my mom are very strong people. And we are very proud people. So we talk about where we are from. My dad used to say, sit down, you look like you have low self-esteem. Let me tell you who you people are. You're 13, and you look like you need a lesson about who you come from. And he would literally sit me down and tell me who my ancestors were. So we had this sort of strong family lineage and pride and power. Of course, my dad was an entrepreneur. My mom was a registered nurse. But I was always obsessed with art. I was doing art. I was singing, I was dancing, I was painting, I was doing, competitions at school. I actually took AP Studio Art. I took drawing, I took ceramics, I took jewelry, and then my parents were like, now you know you're Nigerian, right? There's 3 things you can be. There's only 3 things you can be. You can be a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer. Pick one.
Wow.
So I picked, actually I was supposed to be a surgeon. My dad told me I was going to be a surgeon. He told me I was going to be a surgeon. I went to Emory University and I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. I would like to be a lawyer instead. And my dad was disappointed. He was like, oh. I was like, but it's one of the 3. It's one of the 3. He said, okay, fine. And actually what happened was, I was going to be a clinical psychologist, a doctor of clinical psychology, and then I worked in South Africa in Cape Town. I worked in a law firm there, and I helped indigents seek asylum in South Africa. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a lawyer. This is it. But all of those parts of my youth really inspired being a voice for the voiceless, but also trying to find my way back to art. Because really, you know, the law is creative. The law is creative. You have to persuade people. You have to understand the other side of the story. So I found my own ways to connect with my own inner creativity. But I was always like dancing and singing. I can't sing anymore. I'm not age. But I was always doing something. I used to lead a dance troupe. We do Antilogo, which is an Igbo traditional dance. I used to lead that all the way through college. So it was really in law school I kind of lost myself, even though I lost my creative spark. Even though while I was in law school, I was taking African dance classes in New York. I'm licensed in New York and Illinois. So I went to law school in New York, and I was always trying to find something creative. At any point, at any time, I was doing something creative. And so I realized, working in the built environment is also really creative too, even though infrastructure is very boring. Roads, trains, airports, bridges. I was always sneaking to look at the design. I was like, oh. And they were like, girl, work on the terms. You're not a designer. Like, draft the document. And so I think that's why I found myself here at Gensler, because it allows me to kind of do both. They still don't ask me about my opinion on the design. It's fine. But I am surrounded by creative people, and I love that I get to help them with their voices. So I think if I think about my childhood and I think about my complete passion for creative thinking, I realize that the problem solvers are the most creative people. And so you may not be painting brush. I don't have a brush, I'm not dancing anymore, but I have a lot of creative ideas that I bring to work. We are constantly negotiating and trying to figure out how to get out of one thing or another. And part of that is from problem solving. And I think that my creative past has helped me to be a good problem solver. So when I show up at work, I think that I'm using all those things, from what my dad and my mom taught me, to what I think artists do for the world, which is really to problem solve.
I love that. How does that, should you also?
Oh, right. How does it connect to golden hour, what I'm trying to do? See? I said a whole lot, let me answer the question. For me, when I think about golden hour, I think about a lot of the art that I didn't see in all the big places that I was, right? All these big institutions, I was traveling to New York, and I never really saw diverse stories being told in all the spaces that we were building and all the spaces that we were in and occupying. And so I wanted to create Golden Hour because I felt like, Black art has been around. Picasso was inspired by African masks. Nobody talks about that part. And the fact that Africans have been so challenged in every part of the world, but still they persevere and they create. And so I'm like, how do we tell those stories today? How do we try to highlight the fact that there is true raw talent that needs to be honed in on? And sometimes we just, and it's not always nefarious, right? It's not like necessarily people are trying to keep Black artists from being seen, but I wanted to lend my voice to add to their voices, right? It's my thing to do. It's a passion project that I'm passionate about. Just, seeing more stories about people who look like me. Seeing more stories about people who look like my parents and my grandparents and my cousins. And not seeing that, I thought I could actually do something about that and make a change. And so, it's a labor of love. But for me, I think it's important to tell diverse stories and tell them well, tell them in an elevated way. And that's what we do. We've always been doing that. And so I wanted to just bring that back to the forefront.
With that. And especially now, it's very timely too.
Yeah, it's timely. It is disheartening that where people are trying to erase our contributions to society. But we can't be erased. You see, they tried that already. They tried it. It doesn't work. So they'll keep trying. It's fine, and then they'll learn.
I think it's all about like, us being resilient. You know. It's like,
Yeah.
I was having a conversation earlier about like religion and how like we're able to preserve like our African tradition even through slavery, like syncretism, like people were able to preserve those traditions while hiding it behind like those European practices, but it was still kind of like carried over through ancestry. So I think like there's always gonna be those like people that have like those like nefarious, thoughts, but it's not gonna happen. We're not gonna let them, because it's all from our soul.
They've tried for centuries and it hasn't worked, and that's why I think art from the diaspora is so important to me, because when you think about what we went through in Brazil and what we went through in Atlanta, right? I mean, the way that we were able to creativity again, to persevere and succeed the way we've succeeded as a people, I think that there's something very powerful about that, and I think that is why it's trying to be suppressed. There's a power there, there's a fear, but that's a whole nother. I don't want to get in trouble. We live in a different time now, but so I don't want to get blacklisted. But okay, so let me ask you your question. Okay. So I really love your story. I love the fact that you're Haitian, and the story of an immigrant is a powerful story, especially in the United States. And the fact that you are working in advertising, graphic design, is really your trade, but you found the space to bring this beautiful practice to life. I want to know, what are some ways that you sort of get ready for your process, the creative process? Walk us through your creative process. How do you go from concept to creation? What are you doing? What are you thinking? What are you inspired by? Do you write things down? Do you map it out? Tell us that whole experience and what you do every time.
I wish it was an every time thing, because I feel like every time I come back to making, the process kind of changed. Because I'm finding out every day that I'm not a routine person. So it's been about like, how do I keep myself inspired every day, whether it's through, I love collecting books. I'm not a reader. I love
decoration.
I love having the spirit of the book. So I'm like, okay, I know that the knowledge is available to me when I need it. So I collect a lot of art books, and also I'm inspired by spirituality. Growing up, I grew up Catholic, and there's always been like a fear instilled in, like, fear that whatever you do, like, you think about something sexual, or like you sin, you do this, you sin. And then also like, the shame of having to confess. I would make up lie, I would sin in order to get a confession. And it's like a mind, whatever. And so I'm just thinking about, that's how I kind of got interested in like knowing like where do like Haitian spirituality come from. It's something that is demonized, and voodoo, scary, evil, but it's done on purpose, not only to erase our culture, but also to sever that connection to who we are. And it's sad because I'm sure, like, I have generation, like my grandparents like used to practice but I don't have like a straight connection. I have to seek the knowledge. So that's why I buy the books. I'm like, okay, when I have time, I'll eventually get to it. But it's that knowledge that's accessible right away for me. And so that's like one part of the process, which is about like seeking that connection, going back to past work, like going to museums to get, I feel like the Art Institute is like a wonderful museum. Um, given that the history museum is not positive, but it's good resource for artists to have, and so I try to take advantage of those resources when I can, and also my process. I start with like trying to like jot down like ideas. So like for example, today I listened to a lot of podcasts. I was listening to a podcast and there was this word, it's a Haitian word called makone, so like that intermingling. And so I'm like, okay, this could be the start of an idea because like maybe I could see like bodies kind of like being connected. And so like sometimes my note app is like filled with ideas. So like wherever I can, I have like thousands of like also like notebooks that I have, like journals. But I always like start a new one, even though I have ones that I haven't finished. But yeah, so my note app is like one way that I kind of register those ideas, like whether it's like a word or like something that I've seen. Like I try to make the connection, and of course I'm a modern day artist. Pinterest is my go-to. So I'm always on Pinterest. Like everybody's on maybe TikTok, and I'm like on Pinterest when I get nervous. So I have thousands of Pinterest boards. And on Pinterest, actually, I save pictures of Black women, like different features. So like even though I'm not studying through sketching per se, but I feel like I'm studying through like visual like connection. And so when I get to the studio, so I have like this toolkit that I've created. So I have my Pinterest board. I have like words that I can make a connection to, and it's almost like I have all the ingredients to kind of start the pot. I love cooking, so it's the perfect combination. So I start with like a face because for me the head is I connect to the spiritual meaning behind it. So in Haitian tradition, and a lot of like African tradition, in Yoruba, particularly in Nigeria, they have the ori, meaning the head. And also in Haitian tradition, it's the seat of the soul. So to me, I've always like felt that connection to portraiture, and then now I get to sculpt through that. So I think I feel like I'm all over the place here, but yeah, I'm
making sense.
So it's like different pieces. It's not linear per se, but it's that continual gathering of notes or like all these pieces kind of come together and I'm able to create.
What about those scents? How do you come up with the scents? The scents are fabulous. You guys should see them behind you. Try them out. They're beautiful.
Yes. So with the scents, it's a new practice for me. So I'm still learning. And going back to the way I grew up, like I grew up in a yard, and so it was so easy to go and pick up this leaf and smell it. It's like a kind of like something that I would do naturally, like and so I have like the memory of that. And so when I am conceiving the scent, I like to go with like behind the cultural idea. So these scents are inspired by those masks that mask candles that I create, and I'm able to kind of go behind like the story of the mask, like And so a lot of the scents that I pick are rooted in like woods or like those like tangible materials. And it's more of a, it's not methodical per sense, but it's more about, almost like creating a recipe. So I'm like smelling this scent and I'm smelling it against the other one, and I'm seeing how synergy kind of how they work together. And so I'm writing notes and seeing what I like. So it's more about that, like what do I feel go together, and then I also have a memory of, I know like bergamot will go well with a rose because that citrus with like that flowery smell, it kind of goes together. And so I also use like those memories. So it's almost like when you're cooking and you have these spices and you're used to the flavors, and then you know what will go together. So that's my approach with scent. And it's a growing practice and I'm still learning. And yeah, I'm hoping to, create perfumes eventually.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so
They smell really good.
yeah.
Okay, well, time for a question from the audience. Any questions?
You have a question?
Yes.
I hope I can phrase this in a way that makes sense. But
Yes.
I'm interested in like the two of you being from different parts of the diaspora and having lived in different types of Black culture. Have you noticed any like commonalities between different parts of the diaspora that you found interesting or unique or like inspirational? Because I feel like the Black struggle is like universal, and sometimes there tends to be infighting, and people see more so the differences than the things that are the same.
That's a bomb question.
Yeah.
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take it. So, to me, it's the food. So, I mean, Haitian food, I don't know if who here has had Haitian food? Okay. So, like, I feel like in the Caribbean, like, the rice is such an important,
Yeah.
I guess, like,
Staple.
ingredient, a staple.
Mhm.
But I didn't really realize the history that it has. So Africans, when they were traveling by force to the different parts of the world, they would do cornrows and they would hide grains of rice in their hair. And so that's how a lot of the variety of rice here in the state, I think in South Carolina, I think is a big rice state, has traveled through that. And so even to the like when I look at something like a jambalaya, and I'm like looking at the way Nigerians do their jollof rice.
That's a sensitive topic.
But in the essence of like the way they prepare, like even the way Haitians, like we cook our rice, I feel like there is a connection. It might not be the exact same. Maybe there is like a loss, there's a loss that happened, but the connection is there. Like looking at the little different stews, like in Haiti, we have something called, I forget the name. It's kind of like a okra stew. That it kind of reminds me of like when I see I love watching like people cooking of different culture, like egusi soup and things like that, kind of like drawn down. And then we also have like a version of like a fufu, but we use breadfruit to kind of create the fufu. So I feel like there is, even though there has been a process of erasure, we still kind of held on to our, I guess, who we are through like those different recipes and use the ingredients that were available to us there.
Like a resourcefulness.
Yeah, we have that resourcefulness. But outside of food, even the way like people are raising their kids, like the videos I see, like I'm like, that's my mom. like the eye, the stare, like just little things that I feel like create that connection. And I'm sure you have, having lived in South Africa,
and
Brazil,
um,
Atlanta,
Nigeria.
Nigeria.
All the black cities, Chicago. You know, I feel like the connection that I see is a sense of self and pride. We also love to look good. We like to get dressed up. We are a festive people, I think, right? So when I look at all the places that I've been and lived, I feel like the connection is celebrating life in a certain kind of way that I don't necessarily know not that other cultures don't do this, but I feel like that's one thing that connects us. I think the pride through art is a language that we use. I feel like it's a kind of currency that we have always had. And so when I look at like African American, Afro-Caribbean, you know, Afro-British people, there's lots of people in Canada of African descent. I feel like the language around how we are proud about our heritage links us together. And I also feel like, unfortunately, the struggle is similar. You know, we have a shared heritage. I am not African American, but we were colonized by the British. Hence, my last name is Harry.
Oh, wow.
Very British. My husband's very Nigerian, but they took on the British last name. We were colonized by the British. And so we would not be here if our governments were run properly, right? And so African Americans, Afro-Caribbean people, Afro-Latinos also would be where we should be if, you know, but for the slave trade. So I feel like a displacement is something that we all kind of connect on and with. And trying to give language to that, I think, through art is what I feel like is something that connects us. It looks different, but that's why it's so beautiful and powerful, because it's like it looks different, but it's familiar. It looks different, it's familiar. Same thing with food, too. I mean, I think fufu, I was in Punta Cana, Mofongo. I was like, well, you know, it's just, it looks different, it feels different, but there's so many similarities. We were just talking about being in Brazil, when I worked in Brazil, and there was acarajé. And I was like, we eat acara, which is basically a bean cake. So there are all these like beautiful little nuggets that remind us that we really are the same people. I wish there was less infighting. I mean, let's just be, you know, there is so much that's the same that I'm like, y'all eat rice and stew like us. We're all eating rice and stew, right? A rice and a stew. I mean, there's just so much that is similar that I wish there was less division. I think it's getting better though. There are flights going from Nigeria to Jamaica apparently soon. That's in December. Listen, this is what I said. I said we are a festive people. We like to have a good time. That is one thing I feel like we celebrate life in all of our cultures, in all of our, you know, unique ways. But I think we love life and we like to get dressed. I think getting dressed too is a symbol of the things that we can control, that we, you know, when we were enslaved, we couldn't do much, but we could celebrate, right? I feel like that's what we do now too. In Nigeria, times are hard right now. It's the government is one other thing. The economy's in the trash, but we're gonna have rice. We're gonna be, somebody's gonna be doing Debt to December. Come and see the money they spent. I mean, it's ridiculous. But we are lovers of life, and I feel like that is one thing that connects us. But yeah.
Caribbean, like we have the carnivals.
Yeah.
Our funerals are festive.
Our funerals, our birthdays, masquerades obviously inspired all the carnivals that we see. And again, celebration of life. They're the belief systems that we had, the way that we, Mami Wata, who is now, you know, seen in all kinds of cultures, right? She was a mother of the water. You know, life in water and life around us, the sun and the earth. You know, I feel like there's a lot of ways that we just celebrate life, and I feel like I see that in all of our shared cultures.
We can go on.
We can go on and on. Yeah. Okay, is it my turn or your turn? Oh no, it's my turn. You got me first. Because I got a good question now. Okay, so I don't know if you guys are familiar with this HBO documentary it was a 2021 HBO documentary on Black art. I don't know if you guys watched that. Anybody watch that? No? Yes?
Yep.
Okay, so I thought that Theatrics, who I'm obsessed with, I'm obsessed with the astrogades. And he poses a really interesting question in that documentary about the fact that, are artists able to create in the absence of light? Meaning, if nobody's seeing your work, if nobody's validating your work, nobody's buying your work, you don't have a lot of likes on Instagram, are you still able to create and do the work because the work needs to be done? So my question for you, especially in today's, political climate where we are, getting all kinds of pressures to change things around and suppress certain things, do you feel like you and your practice, you're able to create in the absence of light?
I would say so. I feel like my practice started as a journey towards myself. I don't think it's never been about the recognition for me. I feel like it's been something that's inspired, or like I said in the beginning, that it's like a spiritual practice, and so I feel like I cannot put the light in front of what I'm creating, because otherwise it becomes natural. It becomes forced, and I feel like I would want to create to get validation. I was thinking about what success looked like for me, and for me, success is like just like keep going. Failure to me would be like me stopping because I'm looking for that validation, or because I think I'm not good enough. And so every time I wake up and I decide to it's because it takes a lot of courage to create something. So every time I decide to make it, regardless of what other people is gonna think of it, regardless of, if I like the output, and just like put it out there. I feel like, to me, the light is the process of the creation. And it's not like, oh, is it gonna be shown here, or I haven't sold many art. So I mean, if I was to count, are people gonna buy it, I would not be here. Like I feel like if I was to depend on people are gonna see, or like how people are gonna receive it, I would never find the courage to make anything. And so I feel like it has to come from within.
And see, that's so powerful, because that's the courage that I think Theasa was talking about, right? It's to get up every day and do the work because you have to do the work, not because anyone's going to do anything or praise you for it, right? It's almost like a healing for yourself.
Yeah.
And the fact that you create and you continuously create, that is, I think, the courage right there, right? It's like, I'm doing this because my spirit has moved me to do this, and I really believe that this needs to be done. I feel like there's a lot of courage in that, and just being like, yeah, I'm doing this because I want to do it, and because I was moved to do it. And you're, I think that's like the best way to be.
Exactly.
So
I think it's also, I feel like if you create for other people, like, yes, they might like it, but they're not gonna resonate, they're not gonna be drawn to come back, or, and then when you do it from within, it might sound like very like churchy, but I feel like, I think just like diving deep, it's like journaling. I don't know if anybody here journals, having that reflection. And I also think it's like healing my inner child too, because I feel like it takes a long time, especially as Black women particularly. There's so many messages out there that says that we're not enough, like whether it's like through beauty, or like not seeing yourself represented in a lot of like the fields out there. And for me, like that process of creation has allowed me to be more free and like dream bigger. Yeah, I think that's what I have to say about this. Like if the light is within, it's not,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
it's not outside, it's not external.
It's not external.
And you're not waiting for the light because you are the light.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Okay.
Thanks for the question. That's a good one. I love it. So I have a question related to like you. I'm sure you work in with law spaces. There's not a lot of Black women lawyers. And so how do you navigate? My question is in twofold, so no, two questions in one. So it's like, how do you navigate that as like, being like those rooms where you're the only voice of color, and also like being your creative self, like how do you show up as like that creative person? Like you feel like, how do you not like dim down your light?
Oh, that's such a good question. Those are two really good questions. The first one is hard. It's really hard. I mean, I work in infrastructure. There's not a lot of, I don't even think there were any Black, there might have been one Black person on my team. But all of your clients are white men in construction. So, it's tough. But I learned a lot, and I think, I was raised to remember who I was and who I am and who I am going to be. And so I think in these spaces where people don't look like me, I prepare. I'm prepared. I just try my best to prepare. And then I know that it's gonna be tough. But we can do hard things and we just persevere. But on the creative side, I think, it's easy to dim your light when you're in a space that doesn't have the right soil, the right soil for you to grow. And I was in those spaces. I won't name any names, but I was in spaces where it was really hard for me. I felt like my light was being dimmed, to be honest, because while I was in this really rigorous field, no one was really pouring into me. I saw a lot of my peers. And I'm like, well, look at Susie. Susie's got a lot of support. And I can't believe that my memo is that much worse than Susie's. And so there's a lot of self-doubt that seeps in. But then I realized that they were pouring into Susie because they could see themselves in her. They couldn't really see themselves in me, and that's okay. So I have to find the right soil. And so my light was dimmed for a little bit. And I had to realize that was, because sometimes you're in this environment and you don't really know that your light is being dimmed and you're like, I don't really feel like myself. So I realized I needed to go somewhere else, which I did. So I think for me, I needed to get out of the spaces that did not allow people to pour themselves into me. So that's one. And then on the creative side, I think that I'm a strategist. And I think it's, KPMG, they're like, they train us like soldiers. It's actually kind of interesting. But we were problem solvers. I'm a consultant, so you come to us with your infrastructure problems and we try to fix them. So I think I found a lot of interest in that because even today, I prefer sort of intermingling my legal skills and my strategy skills together. And that's why I like the role that I have now, because we're strategizing how to build a hotel, but we need to think of the terms in a certain way. We need to think about risk. And so there's all these sort of interesting aspects to the conversation around how to protect my client. And so I think that allows me to be creative. And so that helps to let the shining light come back, because I'm not in a space where it's so rigid. And also people pour into me. I feel the difference where I'm in a space where they're like, oh, we love that idea. You're not just writing documents. I'm like, I know, I'm so much more than that. I'm not a bean counter.
You're tapping into your creativity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they say, we see you. I feel seen, is what I'm saying. I feel seen. And those are the spaces I do better in. I'm not a bean counter. I've never been a bean counter lawyer. Some people are really good at bean counting. I like to break the counter and kick down the container and like turn it over and deconstruct it. And that's not for everybody. So yeah, I had to find the right spaces, and I wasn't always in the right spaces. But I will say, everywhere that I've been, I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about rigor and complex matters that force you to be a problem solver, so that's good. But for me to be able to add the creative aspect, I needed to be in a space that was better for me. So, thank you. Question from the audience? Yes.
You guys have talked a lot about, being in different places, being in uncomfortable places too. How has, especially in your creativity, you starting to understand different people and understanding different rooms that you're in, how has that affected you personally and just how you communicate to the world or communicate with your art, and what has that done to you personally and shaped you?
Can I ask a clarifying? Like, are you talking about like spaces like of work, or just like the location, like through living different?
Yeah, so like for you personally, with your art, how has some of these experiences helped shape the way that, your inspiration or your idea that you first have, how does that play in how you're communicating that and showing that to the world?
I would say I think having a curiosity for the world, or if I'm understanding what you asking, I think like being thinking about like my advertising world, it gives me a fire to create an exit strategy. I know that it's not fulfilling in any way, and we only have so much life in us. Like we only have so much time. And if I was to listen to what this job demands of me, they want you to give it all. And so I think for me, it's like the question of like being intentional with the time that I have. Like, what do I want to make of this time? I don't want to spend 8 hours, probably more than 8 hours if I was to listen to the job, just like solving somebody else's for something that I have zero ownership of. And so it makes me think about what do I want to own, like what type of spaces do I want to be in, like what type of community do I want to build, because like I'm also the only Black woman at my job that is doing this art direction type of job. And so in one way I'm like, oh, I always like have this inner struggle, like, do I stay because there's not a lot of me in that space and so that representation is needed? Or do I choose that, life that's more fulfilling? And then also, there's this question of financial stability. That's another thing, another day. But yeah, so I think the spaces that I frequent, whether it's like the corporate space, it kind of makes me think of like how do I who I am outside of it, and how do I contribute to the world. And also like doing the job without ego, because I know at the end of the day it's only a means to an end. So that's what I think about in those spaces.
I'm a listener. I think I try to listen. I try to listen because, most of the time, lawyers are supposed to be listening anyway. That's the goal, right? I'm a counselor, so people come in and I have to listen in order to help them. And so I think that helps me because I try to have an objective mind. And those are times I'm like, okay. I try to be objective, but I think that helps me when I think about golden hour and what I'm trying to do, where we're elevating Black creatives and encouraging people to collect, because I need to have an open mind myself when I'm advising people on the kind of art they want to collect. It is not my style, it is your style, it is your choice, it's your budget. So I think for me, because of the training that I got, listening is really, really important. And not to put what I think, out there and let that be the premises, but rather what the client needs. Law is a professional services, right? It's a professional service, and people just tell me a lot of things, and I just listen half the time. I'm like, you could go to a therapist for cheap. You could. My rate is much higher, but sometimes people really just need to be heard, and I find that there is power in just listening to people, and so I think I'm hoping that I carry that through at Golden Hour. Did we answer your question? Okay.
Should we open it?
Yeah, I think it's 9:01. Arthur, do we want to open it up for questions? Q&A?
I'm here just to guide questions. So, small rodeo here, but yeah, so if you have any, we have a few more minutes for some questions.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm curious, do you, being in the creative space, oftentimes see a disproportionate amount of Black women versus Black men? I feel like in my experience, I've seen more often creative Black women than men. And what's your experience been like? And what do you think has driven that difference if you've experienced it?
I have seen more, you're right, I have seen more Black women. Well, actually, I would say that there are probably more Black architects. I don't know if you would consider an architect. I think architects are in the creative space. Yeah, for sure. Obviously, what am I talking about? Yeah, so no, I think, I would say though, I see architects as artists and engineers wrapped in one. They would say different, but because it's such an engineering kind of world, I feel like I see more men in architecture. But you're right, I have seen more women generally. I don't know why that is. I wonder if it is because maybe Black men are encouraged to do more concrete, sort of clear path types of jobs, and rather than being more creative, maybe. I'm not sure. That's actually a good question. I didn't think about that one.
So
Yeah.
it has to do with the trend of Black women go for more education, or
Yeah.
I wonder if that kind of has that
Yeah.
simulation.
But we are the most educated. We are more educated. But then I would think that we would be seeing men also in the more creative space too. Because she's asking about creative space,
Right.
not necessarily more academic. That's a very good question.
I wonder if it's a
Cultural thing?
perception of masculinity versus femininity thing.
Maybe.
I have a question.
That's a good
Piggyback
question.
on that.
Yeah.
Do you think it has to do with, and I say this coming from also an Asian background, for me, art is like a form of expression. So I wonder if it comes from a place of expression, like emoting.
Yeah.
And I wonder if
a
that's
good
where
one.
it comes from.
I think that might be right. I think that might be right. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I just know that from Asian background, that's a lot of
Yeah.
men are
Yeah.
against it, but
Yeah.
a lot more females are.
I feel like we are socialized to be. I feel like women are socialized to be more expressive. But I think in the Black community, particularly, we're still in survival mode in a lot of places, and art is a privilege. So, I think not that Black women would have this similar struggle as Black men, but maybe it's more accepted within our community that we have the courage to pursue those type of expression. But I do think there are a lot of Black men, but you do make a really interesting observation. I wish I had a good answer.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Question back there. Yeah.
So if we leaning into like the duality that exists and how you all express yourselves creatively, right? One from this traditional kind of art background, one in this problem-solving manner. Can you share with the room kind of the last time you both individually had a aha, like creative moment, and how that existed and how it felt in the moment?
Yeah. I
Sorry,
can-
I put you on, that's a question. I apologize.
That's a good question. I can share. So this is, part of my job is to train people. And I realized that architects and designers they don't really want to learn about the law. I don't know why. They're like running from me every time they see me. No, that's not true. But I found it hard to train. So I would put these sessions up. I'm like, we're going to talk about contracts and negotiating. And I found that I had to meet them where they were. And I had to get creative. So I said, okay, nobody's showing up. Okay. Had these sessions, I planned them out, got my lessons. And I realized that I needed to get creative. First of all, I needed to be a little bit more interesting in my presentations because I work for a creative space. I'm over here like putting together these like legal. I was like, no, okay, you gotta get creative. And then I needed to meet them where they were because architects and designers are billable hours. I'm no longer on the billable hour train, thank God. But I know that pressure, right? When every hour, every second you have to bill. So I said, okay, how about I just join them in the meetings that they already have. So rather than forcing you to make the time to come to my session, I'm gonna pop up at the meeting you already have. It's a standing meeting, so I'm just gonna be here. And I will give you vignettes of information. And so I thought that was an aha moment because I was like, you know what? They are my clients. I have to serve them. And so how am I going to scale my impact if I continuously try to do it in this rigid way that wasn't working? So I was like, all right, cool. What time is the meeting? I'll be there. And I have like only 5 slides to get this really important information to you. So that was an aha moment. It's not that sexy, but it's one.
It's aha.
It's the most recent one.
The most recent one for me was actually this week. I had set up a meeting with my creative director, and then I was kind of explaining to him my struggles because I'm transitioning to this new team, and I was in my head a lot about like what I was creating, and then I started talking about failure and like I guess my insecurities, and I realized that I was asking him permission to fail, and then he was very kind of open to that. He was like, yeah, this team is about like failing hard and failing fast, and I realized that it was actually my inner child that it kind of put me back in that space of me in the 2nd grade being put in the back of the class because I couldn't get a choreography. But it's like a very specific moment that kind of repeat itself in like my fear of expression. And as soon as I got that permission to let go of like the expectation of success and that permission to just like let go of the expectation. It's okay that I don't have like the best idea in the room. It's okay to fail because failure is part of the process of creation. And so that was a very enlightening moment for me. It's like that it's okay to be vulnerable in sharing that fear because it kind of creates more room for discovery.
I think it's a blessing to be a Black woman. I'm biased. But I think that, we are under attack from many different angles, not only for how we identify in our gender, for the race that we are, but I think it gives us a unique perspective and walk in this life. But you guys both mentioned that you have a day job where when you are in spaces that you are unique in that unique perspective, it can be taxing sometimes just to show up as your true and authentic self. How do you navigate that when you want to go to your creative side, having the energy and the courage to still show up and express when sometimes you may just want to use rest as a form of resistance instead of like outwardly continuing to put yourself out through your creative work as your form of resistance? How do you navigate the duality between that?
I feel like I lean into the rest because I don't know, I feel like I have cycles of creation, so I try not to get down on myself because you know, I think like the world, especially now, it's like about, with social media particularly, it's like about outputting and outputting fast and like being able to show that you have so much work. But creativity, sometimes it can be a slow process and it can be like about revelation. And so for me, I lean into the cycles because sometimes, you know, there are periods where I'm busy with work, I don't have the time, I don't have the space, or my financial needs are somewhere else, and I'm not able to create. But if I was to kind of wallow in that, I feel like it would kind of take me away from those periods that, you know, it's aligning. Like I get opportunities, I get motivation to make, and so it's about not judging yourself. If you're in a period where you don't feel productive, because rest is also productive. Like maybe it's like the time where you get the idea, or like you take the note, or you have time to journal, or like whatever. So I would lean into that rest period and then trust that that productive moment is gonna come.
I love that. I love this question. It's a hard one to answer because I don't always rest. To be honest, I don't always rest. I should though. I think that for me, I do try to take a break because sometimes I'm also a cheer mom. My daughter does competitive cheer. Like, there's a whole other life outside of you know, work and golden hour. So I do try to take a break, and I have to remind myself I actually don't owe anybody anything. I chose this. Nobody told me to do this. And so I try to remind myself of a few things. So the purpose, like what's the point, right? What are we doing this whole thing for? Just take a step back and remind myself as to why I am staying up late and doing all these things and traveling. And if I'm aligned with the purpose, then I will find the energy. But if the thing that's stressing me is not aligned with the purpose, then I rest. I take a break. I step back. And I'm like, I shouldn't be doing that. So I'm trying to be more selective. I'm not perfect at it, but I do try to remind myself of the purpose and the mission. And that helps, I think, to guide you as to like when you should take a step back and you should just try one more time. But I think rest is really, really important. So I'm working on it. Hopefully, if you ask me that question next year, I'll have a better answer.
Alright, we can do one more.
I just wanted to recommend a book. I don't know if you've read The Artist's Way.
I have it at home.
She's collected with intention. Not creative. I know that
It's
book
in
though.
the collection already.
Yeah.
The Artist's
Way.
Way.
There was another question in the back.
Thank you. I like what you were saying earlier about your early childhood experience with the smell, and your liking cooking, and your scents from your candles are great. I have always loved smelling the food from different cultures. I learned a lot about the cultures through the spices. Can you talk about from your perspective, the effects of smell to knowledge and creativity.
That's a hard one. I think I feel like everybody has a memory of smell. Like smell is like our connection to smell is like a direct connection to our memory. And I wouldn't say I know necessarily like how does smell connect to knowledge and creativity per se, but I think
Or how it leads to it.
yeah, I think like it kind of puts you in like a space, right? Like if you smell something, like you walk into a restaurant and then you smell something that kind of reminds you of like your childhood, it creates an environment for you. So I would say, like going straight to the point of that, I feel like being around different smells and letting it create those like environment and like letting smell kind of create like universes. Just like music can put you in like an emotional mood, I feel like smell can help you visualize like different like environments and like make different like those connections to how you've experienced it previously. Or if you have not experienced it, it kind of makes you wonder like, oh, like what is that? Like it's new to me, so like what is that connection for me? So yeah, I guess in summary, I would say that's how I can see smell, knowledge, and creativity kind of come together.
Did you want to answer that?
Oh, I thought, this was a scent expert. Actually, because I had some thoughts. Everybody asked me. But I was going to say, even in my world, in the creative space, we actually do help our clients think through scents because it's a branding experience and it's part of the built environment. Because if you think about like, apartment complexes, there's certain management companies, they have a scent that they've patented. That is part of the experience, and it actually releases something in your brain to remind you of a feeling, an emotion. It also helps you remember that brand and the experience that's attached to that smell. And so we actually play on that too. That is actually part of what our firm and firms like it do.
How do they release the sound? Like, is it imbued in like the?
So sometimes through the pipes. They have a diffuser in the pipe. I'm giving all the secrets away. So sometimes through the pipes, they'll have like there's like a little machine that they'll put. Now, you don't want it to be too strong, and you have to actually test it because there's a whole thing. You have to test it to make sure it doesn't have certain chemicals in it because people are allergic. We try to use natural scents. And we also test them too. So we do mixtures. We have I forget the name of the person that does all the smells, but clients want a branded experience, and clients want you to remember when they come into their space. Oh, yeah, and especially if you have a franchise, then you can just use it throughout all of your franchises across the world. But yeah, they put it in pipes. They'll have sometimes a diffuser in hidden places. So yeah.
I know for commercial spaces that do that, but I didn't realize like a lot more people outside of like like those retail experiences.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea.
Oh yeah.
Las Vegas,
Yep. It's really cool. Yeah. Some of the smells I'm like amazing. Say that again.
I was saying, in Las Vegas, the Aria Hotel, it's lavender vanilla, and I would never forget it because the first time I stayed there, I was like,
amazing
what is
branding.
this? I need this.
See?
So, yeah.
And then,
Or like the Westin. I can't smell that smell without thinking about work.
is that good or bad? Oh. Bad. Yeah. So we, it's part of the built environment experience. We are in the business of experiences. So
That's really
that was a good question.